49ers making a big splash yesterday. Today, saying goodbye to two starting defensive backs. Jimmie Ward, goodbye. Emmanuel Moseley, goodbye. But the 49ers are holding on to their center. Jake Brendel gets a long-term contract. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. Thanks for hanging out on this Winky Wednesday edition of Locked On 49ers. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that we've got another gentleman on the screen with us, Mr. Nick Winkler. It's probably a Winky Tuesday evening if you're watching us immediately on Tuesday night, but happy to have y'all driving to work Wednesday morning listening to Locked On 49ers, as you do every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making this your first listen. We do appreciate that. What do you think, guys? Biggest shock in free agency so far, the loss of Jimmie Ward and Emmanuel Moseley, or the signing of Javon Hargrave? Wink, we didn't get your thoughts yesterday on the big signing of Hargrave. What did you think about yesterday's free agency action? 49ers hot and heavy unexpectedly to start the free agency period.
I think you said it. I was just shocked. You know, it's like, whoa, what a I love it. That seemed like it was an area where they could actually take things to the next level, would be in the interior, right in the middle, tackle. And you go out and you sign a guy who's maybe one of the best. I mean, he's definitely near the top of the NFL in pressures and run stuffing. And what a move by the Niners. Just shocking, but I love it at the same time.
By the way, got some details here on the signing of Javon Hargrave and what that 4-year, $84 million contract looks like. And it's actually not as bad as it looks. Or it's, you know, look, he's one of the top defensive players in the league. And you're gonna give up $20 million per year. But this turns out to be more like a 2-year contract if the 49ers want it to be. So it is somewhat team friendly, even though it was one of the biggest deals doled out during free agency by any team in the NFL. So $23 million signing bonus for Javon Hargrave on his 4-year contract. The base salary is going to be low, $1.165 million, fully guaranteed in 2023. That $23 million signing bonus will be spread out through the 4 years of his contract. So it keeps his first year cap number low. Then he's got an option bonus in 2024 of $6 million with a base salary of $8.8 million. Then in 2025, base salary of $19.9 million, base salary in 2026 of $21.65 million. And he's got some workout bonuses of $100,000 throughout. Basically, the first 2 years fully guaranteed. So what we're looking at with this contract, if none of that made sense to you, and sometimes you got to read them 3 times to figure out what's going on with the jargon and all the contracts that happen in the NFL, and you got to have a law degree half the time to figure out what's going on in the league. And still with the restructures and all the cap, is it fake? Is it real stuff? I think we'll talk about how it is somewhat real for the 49ers, but you're able to make some space sometimes as well in the NFL. Basically what that amounts to is it's a little over $40 million guaranteed for the first 2 years. So as far as cap numbers go, 20 mil in the first couple of years. After that, it's year to year, 19.5 and 21.5 million basically. So $20 million per year for 4 years, some bonuses on top of it. And if the 49ers want out, they could cut him after 2 years, and it's a 2-year, $40 million contract, essentially. They can keep him for 1 more year. They can restructure from there. They can trade him from there. So really a lot of options for the 49ers after the 2 years of guaranteed $20 million money for Javon Hargrave, who's a really good player. So, team-friendly contract in the first year, cap number low, to be able to do some of the things that they were able to do, like sign Jake Brendel today. Jake Brendel, starting center for the 49ers. I like these stories, too, for someone like Jake Brendel, guys. And Croc, I think this is probably one of the players we thought would be back just because he wasn't going to break the bank, because he's been a journeyman his entire career. But for someone like Jake Brendel, who's 30 years old already and never had – I mean, he's bounced around, never known if he's going to make the roster any year of his career. And this is the first time in his career he's going to show up. He knows he has not only a roster spot, but a starting job with the San Francisco 49ers. 4 years, $20 million. So $5 million per year, $8 million of that guaranteed, which tells me they can probably move on after a year or two if they want to very easily with this contract. And but good on him, journeyman that finally at the age of 30 has a long-term contract with an NFL football team, and he's a starter. So I like that, and the number's not big, and the 49ers know at least one more starting position is set.
I like that. Continue to solidify those positions and maybe continue to kind of build some continuity. I know they have to replace Mike McGlinchey, but maybe that's the only guy on the line that you end up having to replace. So the least amount of guys you can replace, I think the better. Now, how good is he? My guy, Rich Madrid, I referenced Rich, I think yesterday as well. Rich, he does a ton of film study. And he says he's not terrible, but he's really not that good. So
he's kind of middle of the road guy.
Yeah, just kind of very middle of the road, which is why he didn't get a big contract, right? Remember when the 49ers signed Richburg a while back? Like, that was a big contract for a center. This one, definitely not that, but someone that the 49ers feel is very serviceable.
And apparently the Jets were in on him, so maybe they had to give him a little bit more, maybe an extra year than they thought they were going to have to with Jake Brendel. Still not a big contract, but according to Ian, sorry, still sick, trying to fight off this cough as I try to talk. I might sound a little raspy today on the podcast. According to Ian Rappaport, the Jets made a push, but Jake Brendel back on a 4-year deal with the San Francisco 49ers. Here's where it gets interesting, guys, because maybe that's it. Maybe they're out of money. Jimmie Ward goes with D'Amico Ryans to the Houston Texans, as does Hassan Ridgeway. But the one that's a little surprising to me is Emmanuel Moseley. Emmanuel Moseley got a 1-year, $6 million contract with the Detroit Lions. And that was the exact kind of a deal that I thought made so much sense for the 49ers and made it so likely that Emmanuel Moseley would be back because he's coming off a torn ACL. And the fact that he tore his ACL keeps him from cashing in on that long-term contract so he can have the 1-year show-me deal. And you get him for half price or probably even less than half price, because if Emmanuel Moseley continued to play last year, didn't have the torn ACL, he would have gotten in free agency probably a 4-year, $15 million per year contract. I think he would have been able to ask for a similar contract to what the 49ers gave Charvarius Ward last year. But the fact that he tore his ACL, I thought made it really likely the 49ers would be able to bring him back. 1 year, $6 million. That's something that I think the 49ers would have and should have matched. So are you guys surprised that either they didn't match it or that Emmanuel Moseley would have rather played for the Detroit Lions? Let me repeat that he would rather play for the Detroit Lions than the San Francisco 49ers. Seems unlikely, but who knows? I don't know.
Well, you never know, because I think what Dan Campbell is doing over there in Detroit, it feels like guys like to kind of play for him, right? Well, we watch Hard Knocks. We watch how they finish the season. They actually finished with a W in a big game, I believe, knocking off the Packers. The issue was the Rams didn't beat Seattle. Otherwise, Lions would have been in the playoffs, right? Yep. So he's turned things around over there in Detroit drastically. They probably feel like they're only getting better and adding guys to the defense, because early on, remember, they lost the game, I think, to Seattle 48-45. Right. So for most of the season, like, offense wasn't their issue. It was defense. So getting guys like him, another year with Aiden Hutchinson and some of these guys that they've drafted, and obviously an offseason this year and some draft picks, they probably feel like, hey, we're knocking on the door. We should be a playoff team. And Dan Campbell's going to kind of infuse that type of confidence in them. Now, as far as the 49ers not going to get them, I think this has to do with Hargraves. And when you spend that type of money, you can go out and get a guy that you want, but outside of him, you're going to have to start to pick and choose who do you want to bring back on what price tag. So, hey, you got to decide. Do we want Jake Brendel on this cheap contract, or do we want Emmanuel Moseley? And it maybe came down to the two guys. Well, we probably need that center right now a little bit more than we need a cornerback. We have Diamador Lenore. Maybe we can go out and sign another veteran, low-price free agent, and also throw some resources later in the draft. So they decided to just go in a different direction. I think the Hargraves was signing kind of snowballed into Moseley not being picked up. They could have done it if they wanted to, but they had to pick and choose how they wanted to kind of play with their money a little bit, and he was the odd man out.
Yeah,
I don't think it's...
Go ahead, Wink.
Well, I don't know if it's so much Moseley wanted to go to Detroit, but that the Niners maybe felt like they were secure enough with Lenore. I mean, we saw Lenore's progress last year. He started off, you're like, oh, no, this is going to be a long season. And he got better and better and better. And he was actually playing really well at the end of the season. So I think that you nailed it. Like, you had to pick, who do we go with? Do we go with the cornerback or do we go with the center? Well, we've got Lenore. We've got our 1 and 2 already. Moseley's been hurt a little bit. Like, seems like a better investment to put it in the offensive line. And it's hard for me to disagree with that logic.
I would say corner over center positional value wise. I would say player wise, Emmanuel Moseley, better player than Brendel, more valuable player than Brendel. So if it's dollar for dollar, yes. But the fact that Brendel was a long-term deal, they could spread some money into the future, makes it even cheaper this year, probably. And we'll see what exactly those numbers look like for Brendel. Whereas it's 1 year, $6 million. It's $6 million on the cap for Moseley. So that might have been a deciding factor as well, where you get a $3 million center in year one versus a $6 million corner. And you do have
coming off of a pretty serious injury.
And yeah, and 49ers and injuries, they probably don't want more injured players on the football team, so that's, I'm sure, a factor as well. More on moving money around and what it means when the 49ers might be changing some of the contracts and converting base salary into signing bonus, and what that means when they're doing this stuff and creating cap space. And I want to talk about a couple players that the 49ers are paying to not be on the roster currently, and why you don't want to go overboard doing that. And I think that might be part of it for the San Francisco 49ers as well. I want to talk a little bit more with Wink about the quarterbacks. I want to get your thoughts on Jimmy's tenure with the Niners, McGlinchey's tenure, Sam Darnold coming in, and a little bit more about Jimmie Ward and some of the other moves going on in the NFL next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's that's past midway point of the NBA season now, and getting into the nitty-gritty there. Crocs, Lakers, futilely trying to get into the playoffs, and now's the perfect time to download FanDuel. Bet against those Lakers, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, for example, if you bet on the Lakers to go to do something in the playoffs, and you don't win that bet, you can get your money back in bonus bets if that first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. They can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to three-pointers drained to NFL draft props. Major League Baseball is going to be getting going. You bet on that every day, all summer long. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Restructuring contracts. Just a real quick note on that. And the 49ers, I'm sure, have done some of that already, and we'll find out when the new league year begins. Maybe we'll get some of those numbers leaked to us, and some of the media will be able to share some of those things. And the 49ers probably not wanting to go overboard. And the reason you don't want to go overboard is because the 49ers have players like D Ford that's currently costing the 49ers $9 million to not play. It feels like a decade since D Ford played for the 49ers. They're paying him $9 million to not play this year because of past restructures. Jimmie Ward, what did he get? $6 million contract, right, from the Houston Texans? The Niners are paying him $6 million this year because of past restructures. The 49ers are paying Jimmie Ward's current salary. If they didn't do that restructure, they could just be paying Jimmie Ward and he could stay on the team, or that's one player, pay Emmanuel Moseley as well. So you don't want to go overboard on restructures, because you don't want to be paying players that aren't on your football team. And yes, you want to be able to put the best team on the field that you can now, but you don't want to go crazy, and you don't want to be paying a bunch of players that aren't on your team either, because that starts to, that starts to snowball. And then the more payers, the more dead money you have on your cap, the more you have to restructure again to make your current team better, which makes you have even more and more dead cap money in future years. So you don't want to go nuts on that, is all I'm saying. So that might be some of the reason why the 49ers said, hey, look, okay, we love Javon Hargrave, one of the top free agents on the market this year. Let's call him. If we can get him, then we'll have to make some concessions elsewhere. And if not, then we'll have more money to bring back Emmanuel Moseley, maybe even Jimmie Ward, or maybe we'll go shopping somewhere else and when we get a right tackle. But I have a feeling, for the most part, the 49ers are pretty darn close to done right now, especially seeing Moseley on what I thought was the right contract for the 49ers to be able to bring him back to see him leave.
Hey, real quick, when you have guys like D Ford, right? You have to pay him. Are they actually paying him like this year, or
no?
How's that
It's
work?
just funny. It's just cap money. So it's money they already paid him, but for the cap purposes, it was pushed back. And so for Jimmie Ward, when they restructured his deal, they added void years. So this is a void year. I think Jimmie Ward might have another void year next year too. And so I think that's what happened with Deep Ward's contract as well. They restructured it. And so you convert the base salary to signing bonus, then you add 2 void years. So now you can spread that signing bonus into the future more. So let's say it's a $10 million signing bonus. You add 2 void years. And so now you've got $5 million and $5 million of signing bonus that he's already paid that is, for the cap purposes, still on the cap and dead money in future years.
That's really wild.
So it's not like Bobby Bonilla money, right? It's not like spread out where he actually gets the check once a year for 20 years or 50 years or whatever.
The Bobby Bonilla deal was that he actually just got paid for 30 years. I'm going to be sad when Bobby Bonilla Day doesn't happen anymore. I forget what day it is, like June something every year. And it's awesome.
$1 million bucks.
I think it's coming to an end soon.
I think it's pretty close because it's a 30-year contract and it was in the 90s. So we're getting there. Yeah.
I'm going to Google it.
Yeah, Google Bobby Bonilla Day. How much did he get? He gets like $1.3 million or something every June. Love it.
So did I see that the Niners re-signed Gibson, right?
Tashawn Gibson did sign on a 1-year contract. Yeah. And so that was really everything's gone pretty much according to plan. I thought McGlinchey would go. Jimmy G was obviously going to be on his way out. The only thing that surprised me is the big move for bringing in Javon Hargrave and losing Emmanuel Moseley on a pretty good 1-year deal, which I think is below what his play is if he does come back from his torn ACL play. Those are the only 2 surprises I've seen so far from the 49ers offseason. What's the numbers, Croc?
All right, so Bobby Bonilla Day is not ending anytime soon. The actual day is July 1st, so you were in the ballpark there. The annual payments will continue until 2035. He'll be 72 years old when it runs out.
Wow, so it was 40 years then. Was it a 40-year contract?
That's wild.
Well, it looks like when they started it. So he's 59 years old now. Like, it doesn't run out for another 13 years.
So, but it was in the 90s when they signed it, and he got like
25 years.
25 years sounds right. Yeah. Wow. And so it didn't start till after he was gone, right? After he
it started after a while.
25 years. Yeah. Okay.
That is wild.
That's amazing.
I mean, you know it, you hear about it, you know he's getting his money, but it's just the way they did it and the way a guy it's like, because on top of that, he gets his pension. You know, all these athletes, you know, when you play a certain amount of years, you get your pension, and your pension, it depends on how much money you made during your playing career, and they kind of figure it out some type of way. So, like, on top of his pension, which is probably pretty good, he's getting this extra $1 million a year.
And no matter what he does, no matter how bad he could possibly be with his financials throughout his life, every summer
he's back coming.
In the game, baby. It's like, let's go. I got my 1.3. Let's go. I can live on 1.3 every year. You know, it's pretty amazing.
That's great.
I love that.
A lot of people wish that. I mean, people go broke. You know, after
I would love that contract
after playing. You know, there are a lot of guys that go broke, especially in some of these other sports. Obviously, baseball's a little harder to go broke just because you make so much guaranteed money.
Yeah.
But guys figure out different ways to go broke. I mean, when you hear about what these guys are gambling with, Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan, you know, $10,000 a hole and all these kind of crazy bets, right? So guys do end up going broke, but Bobby Bonilla, he is not going broke anytime soon.
He'll be fine.
Unless he borrows. Now, that's the tough part, right?
That's true.
How can I borrow from this money I know I have coming?
Everybody knows it's coming.
Borrowing against it. Oh, that could go bad. Yeah, you're right.
Hopefully he doesn't do that.
Don't do it, Bobby.
End up going broke are the ones that retire so early and only have like the one contract, and they live it up like they're going to continue to get that contract forever, and then they don't ever get a second contract or a third contract or whatever it is. And you know, in your 20s, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm in my 30s and I'm not making any more money.
What's that 30 for 30? Is it called broke? Is that what it was, or bankrupt or something? Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so heartbreaking at the same time.
They tell the guys, man, like during OTAs, and this is the part a lot of people don't know about, but during OTAs, at least the Jets, how we did it, you had it was like 4 days a week, because we had OTAs 4 days a week. So 4 days a week, it was like after lunch, the veterans got to go home, the rookies and second-year players had to stay, And it was almost like a life and decision-making course type thing. But they literally went over every single thing that you'd come across as a professional athlete. And dang near like a man, but professional athlete. Just any situation, any scenario that y'all can think of, we went over it. From how to buy a car, how to buy a house. Like, and they bring in the people to tell you, hey, don't do this. Do this. Don't spend this. And they give you here's your contract. If you make the base salary, break it up like this, divided by this is how much you should spend on your house. This is how much you should spend on your phone. This is how much you should use for leisure money, like for entertainment. They literally break down every single thing you'll ever come across. And guys still blow it. Like, still blow it.
You think the guy that was handing you cash at the strip club for you to throw around, Croc? Do you think he was following those rules?
That was covered.
He probably wants that he probably wants that $2,000 back right about now.
Ooh, man, I can't imagine. So much money.
Croc threw $1,000 and then invested $1,000 of it.
I don't even think I threw $1,000. hey, look, for those of y'all listening right now that don't know how the offseason, how these seasons work. First of all, as far as your real contract, you only get that. I think they just now changed it in the CBA where you can receive your money different. You can spread it out over an entire year now. But previously, it was 16-game season. That's when you get paid. All right. And then in the postseason, for some guys, it's a fragment of what they typically get paid. So if you are, a quarterback making $2 million a week during the regular season, well, you're not making that come postseason. You'll make that $22,000 that first week, 40, whatever, right? It's not much money for them. Well, in the offseason, you get nothing. Unless you're like Antonio Cromartie, who had a $200,000 workout bonus. But even then, when you make so much, that's still not even a ton of money. So most guys that are like Eric Crocker, like you get nothing during the offseason except for your weekly stipend, which is maybe $1,200. But when you kind of live a certain lifestyle and you're some of these guys, $1,200 isn't a lot of money a week. We're talking about, and that was back then. So we're talking about 10 years ago now. It's more now. I'm sure it's probably over $2,500 a week. But when you have a house, cars, etc., that ain't much money. So you kind of need that money. Guys go broke, and they look forward to the offseason just to get the stipend. Because when you're away, you're not getting that. That when you're off in the summer for that week or for that month, you get $0. Now, some guys have endorsements and things like that, so it's a little different. But 80% of the guys don't have any legit endorsements like that.
You get the guys that do the opposite too, that go hardcore and they save their entire game checks, their entire career, and only live off their meal money or their stipend or whatever it is, depending on the sport. I think
Marshawn Lynch did a lot of that. There's a few other that didn't
drove like the Toyota Camry into. Like he had a crazy contract and he was still driving like this beater car that he had when he was drafted, when he was driving in college.
Right.
I mean, Andrew, was it Andrew Luck? Maybe I can't remember who it was.
Well, Tim Tebow was driving a Ford Explorer. I saw that in person.
Mm-hmm.
So
smart
at that time. Now after that, but even then he got cut like 3 weeks later. So
yeah, he's making that TV money now. Let's not feel bad.
Right. Yeah. No, he's good.
I'm old enough to remember when Ford Explorers were the lap of luxury.
Right. That was high school, man. Oh, your parents have an Explorer? Damn.
One more contract. The 49ers are saying goodbye to one more player, linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, and then we'll talk quarterbacks. Wink, I want to get your perspective on what you think Sam Darnold's role will be for the San Francisco 49ers next. Today's episode brought to you in part by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app, and if you've ever thought about being an NFL GM, you'd make a good GM. You got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think, by the way, to create that dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get control to manage everything, every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build that historic dynasty. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators on Ultimate Football GM, manage all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM, completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want to and when you want to. And Locked On 49ers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. That's promo code Locked On, so make sure you check it out today. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. So Azeez Al-Shaair not going to the Houston Texans as I thought. Ridgeway and Jimmie Ward followed DeMeco Ryans to Houston, but Azeez Al-Shaair signing with the Tennessee Titans. I don't have the exact dollar figure there, but as expected, Azeez Al-Shaair, after they paid, obviously, Fred Warner and then Dre Greenlaw, they just don't have a lot of money to throw at more linebackers. So we're going to see some youth in the reserves for linebackers. Marcelino McCrary-Ball was on the practice squad last year, had a really nice camp. I think he could be in the mix for that, third, fourth, fifth linebacker. Curtis Robinson, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles is a restricted free agent. We'll find out on him. So Niners say goodbye to three players here and three guys who played starting roles at times and the longest tenured 49er, by the way, in Jimmie Ward, which means I think the longest tenured 49er now has got to be Eric Armstead.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Nice spot, nice landing spot for Azeez. Being able to play for Variable, and he their philosophy on how they just play the game is very similar to the 49ers. A lot of smash mouth, and obviously they got Rand Carthon who went over there. So
right, that makes a lot of sense.
What Azeez is all about, but
I didn't even think about Rand Carthon being over there in Tennessee. Yeah, you knew, like, he's one of the easiest signings for me from the 49ers, just because it was obvious they weren't going to be able to fit him under the salary cap with all the other linebackers they were playing. But he's a starting caliber player. I would have signed him in a heartbeat if I was running. So good on Rand Carthon for recognizing that, and I think he's going to be a great fit there in Tennessee and probably be a bargain of a player for them.
Jimmie Ward will be missed big time.
Yeah, Jimmie Ward. I like Jimmie Ward. I loved how his career started out with what positions he plays. He's hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? What's going on? And he ended up being a really important member of the 49ers for a long time. I really feel that way about Mike McGlinchey. He was a good 49er. Jimmie Ward, really good 49er. Jimmy Garoppolo, good 49er. Half the fan base seem like love to hate him, but Wink, what are your thoughts on those guys, especially Jimmy G?
I love Jimmy G. I've always loved Jimmy G. I wish Jimmy G nothing but the best. I think that's another good landing spot for him, a system he knows. Good for Garoppolo. I'm happy he's going to get a starting gig. Hopefully he can stay healthy for Las Vegas, because when he's healthy, he wins football games. That's what Jimmy does, and he did a lot for the 49ers. So, hats off to Jimmy G. Respect. Good luck.
Well, they also just traded away Darren Waller.
Waller. Did you see
I saw that. What is that all about?
Did you see this story about, this is kind of one of those quote unquote Patriot way things. So Vic Tafer, who covers the Raiders, said the trade comes 10 days after Darren Waller's wedding to Aces guard Kelsey Plum. The timing is only interesting because Josh McDaniels accidentally leaked the news of his wedding to reporters at the NFL Scouting Combine. Waller was upset with McDaniels when the Las Vegas Review-Journal posted a story announcing the wedding was scheduled later in the week. The couple had not publicly announced their plans to get married.
Oof.
Wow. So, I was just about to say that he just got married. His wife is there in Vegas, and it's like, nope, we're going to send you out of here. Because how sweet is that, right? Like, okay, my wife, she's the face of this WNBA team and the league. Like, she's going crazy right now. I'm on the Raiders. I'm one of the big dogs on the Raiders. Like, this is cool. We're having fun. We're having the ball. And McDaniel was like, you're having a little bit too much fun. We got to send you packing. Peace.
Across the country, too. It's not like it's close. It's, oh, man, all the way to New York.
Yeah, New York.
Oh, man, that's as far as it gets for him.
Comp pick 100. So that's the pick in between the 49ers picks. The Niners pick 99, 101, and 102. That pick number 100 now is the Raiders pick. It was the Giants pick. They traded it for Darren Waller.
But that's all it took?
Yeah, it was pick 100. He's got a big contract, and he's been injured a lot the last couple of years, so I'm sure that lowered the price. But man, if he's healthy, that's a hell of a deal for the Giants, especially because there's not a lot of good receivers to go get on the market right now. Still some good receivers for Jimmy to throw to in Las Vegas, though. I mean, obviously Devontae Adams, with the way Jimmy plays and McDaniel's scheme, I would think Hunter Renfrow.
Did they sign Jacoby Myers? Did I see that?
Yeah, and they signed Jacoby Myers. I thought Renfrow might be the one to go just because they signed a new receiver, but nope, it was Waller.
Man, that's wild.
About to go.
Renfrow can kind of jump back into that slot number 3, which is more his style, anyways.
Yeah, Yeah.
And it sounds like it's not a lot, but Dallas Cowboys traded for Stephon Gilmore, and I believe that was a 5th-round pick. So
yeah, that was a comp 5th too. So late 5th-round pick for Stephon Gilmore, and he's making I think $9 million on the last year of his contract.
He's 32, something like that.
Still can play though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he can play
until he can't.
But the 49ers can't get in on any of those deals because I don't think they have enough money to pay any of those guys.
Right.
What do you think,
Sam?
Sam?
They got Sam Darnold.
Okay, so here, so real quick, so we're talking about who the 49ers signed, and we know we got a big dog right there in the middle now. But would you rather have that, spend all that money on him, or a combination of Stephon Gilmore, Emmanuel Moseley, and Jimmie Ward?
Right.
Or big dog's nice. But
What about Waller? What about Waller
and Darren Waller? There we go. So I'm gonna give us all of them, right?
So yeah, probably you could. Yeah. Well,
that's the thing with the DeForest Buckner thing, where it's like, okay, you got Buckner, or you might lose some of these guys. So the 49ers now, because you made a big splash signing, now you can't be a player in Darren Waller, who would have been a sweet tight end too. The 49ers, I feel like they're really looking for that guy. Jimmie Ward had to let him walk, and maybe let him walk anyway because you have Gibson. But then now, okay, you know what? We're going to go get Stephon Gilmore to play opposite of Mooney Ward. I mean, that
would have been sweet.
Real quick, Croc, with the Niners secondary now. So I think a little thin depth. They've got a lot of draft picks. So immediately right now, after 2 days of free agency, offensive tackle, defensive back are the two biggest needs, I think, going into the draft.
Yep.
Defensive tackle's not really there anymore. Edge is probably in there right now as well. Those are the top 3. If I did a mock today, those would be the 3 positions I'd probably give the 49ers if there's good players there at the end of the 3rd round. But looking at the 49ers secondary, they re-signed Sean Gibson. It's only a 1-year deal. You got Talanoa Hufanga at strong safety, Deommodore Lenoir, Charvarius Ward at corners, and last year's 5th rounder, probably Sam Womack in the slot, right? You feel okay with that going into the season? Like, that's it. We're done. Those are your starters. You're good?
The only reason why I feel good about it is because they haven't, at least this regime. Now again, we'll see, because you lose Salah, and it's like, okay, we're good, got D'Amico. Then you lose D'Amico, then now it's like, all right, we'll see Wilkes, okay. But it feels like the coaches who Kyle Shanahan has identified have done a really good job of putting players in position to be successful for who they are. So if I continue to lean on that, then I'm good. But if I'm being honest, right, I kind of take out the past and just how I feel about that group, I would say heading into the season, it feels like probably the weakest secondary that they've had probably in years, right? Because if you go back to after the Super Bowl run, well, Richard Sherman was coming off of an all-pro year. Kelly Witherspoon, he could start, he could play, but Emmanuel Moseley, he finished the season strong. Yeah, Jason Verrett behind him, still had Tart, you still had Ward. It was like, well, all these guys are really good, right? And you had Kawhi Williams. That was a strong, to me, it's like, man, I'm very confident. Last year, Moseley, Mooney Ward, Jimmie Ward, Hufanga, we'll see. That was kind of the only question mark, but you were like, I'm still confident. Now it's like, all right, because, nickel, who's going to be that guy outside? Okay, Lenoir for an entire season, what's it going to look like? Because it was kind of weird, then it got great, then it was weird, then it finished strong. Hufanga, did they start to figure him out? He started busting coverages down the stretch. Now I feel like there's just more, there's more question. New defensive coordinator, how's he going to mess with these guys? You're going to have to bank on that D-line just being dominant. And if you do that, then maybe there won't be a drop-off.
Yeah, and you're one turned ankle away from, I don't know, a rookie at free safety, or Thomas maybe at corner. Charvarius Ward gets hurt, so it's thin.
And Ward, he left the game a few times, right? I remember him
he did
leaving the game a little bit in Atlanta, but then he came back, played against Kansas City, but wasn't 100%. He was kind of in and out at times. When he was on and he was good, awesome. But as far as, you're saying turning an ankle, all right, now you're an ankle turned away from Ambry Thomas, Deommodore Lenoir. What would that look like over a stretch of games? And with the 49ers, how they've had injuries, it's just always something in the back of my mind, at least.
Odom, I got to
mention Odom,
who's still around. Hold one second. I got to mention Odom's still around, so I want to give him some respect. Backup strong safety. He could be a backup free safety as well, probably. So there's a veteran player there on the 49ers roster.
Dante Johnson.
I was just going to say, of course, you can't forget. Wide open roster spot for Dante Johnson coming back.
He'll be back.
Yeah. Well, he tore his ACL, though, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
End of the season, he'll be back.
Oh.
No, but so D-line, guys. So you think this Hargrave signing takes the Niners out of the possibility of re-signing like a Menahue or Ebicom? Like, does you think that they can't throw any more money at the D-line?
It feels like it, and that's what I thought right away too. It was like, okay, well, if they have to give $10-12 million to one of those guys, they probably said, well, why don't we go? Because I actually like the Hargrave deal for $20 million. You get the best player at the position, like Zach Allen got $15 million per year. It's like he's nowhere near as good. Like that's a big tier jump there. So might as well spend the extra $5 million a year and get an actual difference making player there. So maybe that was the thought process with the 49ers. They can still restructure some things and create some more space. We'll see what they're able to do. But they have a needed edge, and I don't know if they'll try to go bargain hunting again. They've done a good job of bringing in cheaper players, and they've earned themselves better contracts when they leave the 49ers than they got with the 49ers. So we'll see if they continue that thing.
It's pretty good to start opposite Nick Bosa. That's probably a good selling point.
That's the thing. Whoever gets that job is in a real nice spot, and you hope it's Jake Jackson, and that's what the 49ers, I'm sure their hope is. And so we'll see if it's that, or if he's a rotational guy, and if they have Armstead on the outside, but they still need some depth and still need to sign some players. T.Y. McGill, I think he'll be super cheap. They can bring him back. He should probably, finish off that defensive tackle group. But the edge guys, I'm not sure about, because Abelcom and Emmanuel might make a little bit of money, and maybe they're just waiting that out to after the first wave of free agency. Then you start to find little better deals.
Yeah. Sam
Darnold, what do you think? What do you think the role is for Sam Darnold? We have the details on his contract as well, really quick here. So Sam Darnold signed a 1-year contract with a base value of $4.5 million. $3.5 million of that is guaranteed. I think some of that contract is bonus related, so it's a little bit lower than the $4.5 million base salary for the cap numbers, at least to start the season. So $3.5 million guaranteed. That doesn't sound like a guy that you will probably cut at the end of training camp. So I think the 49ers expect him to be around. What do you think the role is going to be for Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I think he's that safety net, right? I mean, you got two guys coming off of injuries, Lance and Purdy, and hopefully they both are back to full strength when the season starts, or at least when training camp opens. But if you don't, you've got a veteran, a guy who's been around a couple of teams now, who maybe Greasy and Shanahan can get in his ear and actually turn him into something great. I mean, why not, right? It doesn't seem like a whole lot of money to invest in that kind of possibility, especially with what you saw, how the season ended. Right, with Josh Johnson, like you got to have somebody in there that's capable of taking a snap and throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, you knew Kyle was going to bring in 3 quarterbacks he felt comfortable with, and so I think he's got that now. As long as Purdy comes back and gives them some breathing room. Maybe Purdy's not ready to start the season. You've got a guy who's started NFL games. From all reports, Sam Darnold's a good locker room guy, good teammate, and those types of things. And it's not a huge deal. Sub $5 million was sort of my thing. It's got to be less than $5 million. It is less than $5 million. So I think it's an all right deal. And maybe there's still a little something there with Sam Darnold that Kyle Shanahan can find within him. We'll see. Thanks, Wink, for joining us once again here on Locked On 49ers.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Make sure you subscribe to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily. We're breaking down all the news around the league every single day. We got Locked On NFL Draft. And, of course, your teams are covered in every sport right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Croc and I back tomorrow. Locked On 49ers.
See you.